Welcome to Campfire Tales. I'm Jamie and this is
Hannah.
We are going to be talking about some Western stories today to go with our lovely campfire. And we hope you enjoy. Why don't you go first?
All right, I'm reading Bad Day at Riverbend. Riverbend was a quiet little town, just a couple dozen buildings alongside a dusty road that led nowhere. Though the stagecoach occasionally rolled through town, it never stopped because no one ever came to Riverbend, and no one ever left. It was the kind of place where one day was just like all the rest. But one morning, Sheriff Ned Hardy stood in front of the Riverbend jail and saw something he'd never seen before. A brilliant light in the western sky. It lasted a few minutes, then faded away. Sheriff Hardy went into the jailhouse. He was sitting quietly at his desk, wondering what the strange light meant, when a loud pounding rattled the jailhouse door. The sheriff opened it and saw Owen Buck, the blacksmith's boy, breathing so hard he could barely speak. In between gasps, Ned Hardy heard the words, "Stagecoach," and "something awful." The sheriff followed Owen outside. The coach had never stopped in Riverbend before, but now it stood motionless at the end of the street. A crowd gathered around it, but they held back as if they were afraid to get too close. It was easy to see why. The horses were covered with great stripes of some kind of shiny, greasy slime. "What is it, Sheriff?" someone asked as Ned Hardy stepped up to the coach. He didn't know. It was the strangest thing he'd ever seen. The strangest thing anyone had ever seen. The horses were nervous and breathing hard. They looked terrible, their smooth white coats scarred with the strange stuff that hung from them in loopy ropes or stuck out like stiff wire. The sheriff grabbed a piece with both hands. It was slippery. He gave it a pull and the horse jerked away and whinnied in pain. Whatever the stuff was, it stuck to them as sure as their flesh. "Where's the coachman?" Sheriff Hardy asked. "Gone," someone answered. "The coach came into town without him." Uh-oh. Ned Hardy wasn't sure what to do. He scratched his head. "Well," he finally said, "guess I'll go look for him." The sheriff rode out of town, following the wagon's trail west. Before long, he stopped his horse. The ground was covered with the same marks that were on the horses. Whatever happened must have happened here. He didn't see any sign of the driver, but he heard a muffled sound. Ned Hardy got off his horse and discovered the coachman sitting on the ground behind a rock. The poor man looked awful. He was covered with the greasy slime. Thick stripes of the stuff ran right across his eyes and mouth. He couldn't see or speak except to mumble. "That's kind of horrible." The sheriff helped the coachman up and led him to the horse. As they rode together back toward Riverbend, Ned Hardy heard the sound of thundering hoofbeats. He rode to the top of the ridge and looked down on a charging herd of cattle, many marked with the awful slime that covered his poor saddlemate. When he turned his horse back toward town, he saw the same bright light in the sky he'd seen that morning. It was just beyond the horizon, right over Riverbend. It didn't last long. As he approached Riverbend, it was clear to Ned Hardy, even from a distance, that something terrible had happened. Riding into town, he could barely bring himself to look at the buildings, now covered with the hideous marks and stripes. The sheriff got out of the saddle. The town looked deserted, but when he passed the hotel, someone called out, "Sheriff!" Ned Hardy helped the coach driver down and led him to the hotel. The townspeople and some cowboys were gathered inside. A few were covered with the greasy slime. They all told the same story. Without warning, the sky overhead had filled with a brilliant light, a light that froze everything it touched. Herds of cattle, even birds in the sky, and it was blinding. "Like stepping out of a privy and looking straight into the sun at high noon," one of the cowboys said. "Couldn't see a darn thing." When the light passed, they were covered with the greasy marks. "What are we going to do, Sheriff?" someone asked. "We can't spend our lives hiding in here." "No," Ned Hardy said. "No, we can't." He walked outside and stood in front of the hotel. His bravery inspired the others, and they joined him there. They looked at their poor town. Pretty little Riverbend was now too ugly for words. "Look," someone shouted, pointing at the sky above the hills just out of town. The mysterious light appeared. Some people ran back inside the hotel, but Ned Hardy just stared at the strange light without blinking an eye. "Whatever evil thing has done this is out in those hills," he said, pointing in the direction of the light. "I aim to right out there and put an end to it."
Oh, good luck, Sheriff.
Yeah, that's pretty brave. The sheriff left town with a posse of well-armed men. They followed the trail of light. It wasn't hard to tell where it had been. The greasy streaks were everywhere. The men even saw them floating in the sky, but the light they sought always appeared just beyond the horizon. Then they saw the mysterious light shine brightly just over the next hill. The men crawled up the hill, but the light faded away as they peeked over the top. Looking down, the brave cowboys saw something that made them gasp. There was a man standing perfectly still at the bottom of the hill. He was as tall as a cottonwood tree and as skinny as a broomstick. And he looked like he was made entirely of the greasy stuff that now covered the countryside.
Oh, I wonder what's going to happen now.
Look, they even gave him a gun. Oh no.
He's armed.
Ned Hardy was sure that this long-legged fellow was the cause of all their grief. They had only one chance. They'd have to get close enough to take a shot at the skinny devil before he used the light to freeze them. They crawled back to their horses. Ned Hardy gave a silent signal and the posse charged forward.
Oh, man.
But just as they came over the hill, they were frozen in the bright light that suddenly filled the sky. Oh my gosh! They were in a coloring book the whole time!
Oh, those scribbles.
And then the light went out. The end.
Oh, but what a beautiful story that was.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read Bubba the Cowboy Prince, a Fractured Texas Tale. Once, a strapping young feller named Bubba lived on a ranch, and his wicked stepbuddy and his hateful and lazy stepbrothers Dwayne and Milton. Bubba's stepdaddy spoiled Dwayne and Milton to no end, but Bubba worked from sunup to sundown doing the chores of 3 ranch hands. Bubba never complained though. He loved ranching. Dwayne and Milton spent their days sitting on horseback, bossing Bubba around. "Get them doggies along there, Bubba," ordered Dwayne. "Yeah, and watch out for them cow patties," added Milton. "You know how Daddy hates for you to track up the house."
That's not nice. I don't like that.
Now, Miss Lurleen, who lived down the road a piece, was the prettiest and richest gal in the county. She owned the biggest spread west of the Brezzos, and she loved ranching too. But it was lonesome work, and after a while, she decided it was time for some companionship. "I aim to find myself a feller," she said, "one who loves ranching as much as I do, and it wouldn't hurt if he was cute as a cow's ear either." Ms. Lurleen decided to throw a ball. She sent invitations to all the ranches in Texas. Let's see how this goes. Soon the day of the ball arrived. Milton and Dwayne spent all day getting gussied up in their finest duds. Bubba about ran himself ragged waiting on them. "Bubba," shouted Dwayne, "fetch my bolo tie." "Bubba," shouted Milton, "get my boots polished." "Bubba," shouted his wicked stepdaddy, "brush those horses and wash that wagon." Poor Bubba. By the time Dwayne and Milton and their wicked daddy were ready to go, Bubba was exhausted. Still, as I climbed into the wagon, Bubba asked, "Can't you wait for me to get ready? I want to dance with Miss Lorleen too." Dwayne and Milton and their wicked daddy hooted and hollered. "Why, you're sorrier than a steer in a stockyard," said Dwayne. "Can you imagine Miss Lorleen dancing with the likes of you?" said Milton. "Miss Lorleen can even wipe the dirt clods off her boots with that raggy shirt of yours. And you smell more like the cattle than the cattle do." Bubba took a look at himself. It was true. He didn't have a decent shirt to wear. His boots were downright disgraceful. And he did smell a bit rough. Milton and Dwayne were right. Miss Lorleen wouldn't dance with the likes of him. Bubba hung his head. He felt lower than a rattlesnake in a gully. Milton and Dwayne and their wicked daddy went on off to the ball. Bubba mounted his horse and headed for the pasture to check on the herd. The sky was getting darker than a black bull at midnight. It looked like a Texas thunderstorm was brewing. Was it? Bubba had just arrived at the cow pasture when a bolt of lightning struck, knocking him off his horse. Bubba was stunned for a moment, but when he picked himself up, he heard a voice. "Go to the ball, Bubba," said the voice. Bubba looked around. No one was there except for him and the cows. Now, Bubba figured he bonked the bejeebers out of his being because the voice was coming from a cow. She chewed her cud for a moment, then said, "I'm your fairy god cow, and I can help you get to the ball." Bubba sat up, rubbing his head. "I'd like to go, Miss God Cow, but shoot, I don't have a thing to wear." The fairy god cow swished her tail, and Bubba's righty clothes changed into the handsomest cowboy duds he'd ever laid eyes on. His jeans were crisp, his boots were shiny, his shirt was dazzling, and his Stetson was wider than a new Salt Lake. "Why, I look downright pretty," said Bubba. The fairy god cow swished her tail again, and a nearby steer turned into the most beautiful white stallion Bubba had ever seen. "Now you go on off to the ball, Bubba, and have a good time dancing with Miss Lorleen. But you best be home by midnight, because that's when the magic runs out." "Yahoo!" shouted Bubba as he jumped on the white horse and hopped off to the ball. When Bubba arrived, the hoedown was in full swing. But every time Miss Lorleen finished a dance, she yawned. "There goes another $10 Stetson on a 5-cent head," she complained. "Where are all the real cowboys?" By the time it was Bubba's turn to dance with Miss Lorleen, it was almost midnight. Soon as he saw Bubba, Miss Lorleen's eyes lit up. "Why, you're cute as a cow's ear," she said. Bubba blushed, then took Miss Lorleen in his arms and started dancing. Dwayne and Milton turned purple with jealousy. "Who is that dude?" said Dwayne. "I don't recollect seeing him before, but he looks a mite familiar," said Milton. "Do something," said their wicked daddy. "That cowboy is winning Miss Lorleen's heart." Let's see how this goes. As it turned out, Milton and Dwayne didn't have to do a thing because Bubba and Miss Lorleen were in the middle of do-si-doing when the clock struck midnight. Suddenly, Bubba's fine duds turned into the dirty rags he usually wore around the ranch. He looked sorry, and he smelled worse. "What is that awful smell?" asked Milton. "Why, it's Bubba," shouted Dwayne. Bubba turned 14 shades of red, apologized to Miss Lorleen, and ran out of the room. "Wait!" she yelled, chasing after him.
Aw, poor Bubba.
But Bubba didn't wait. He jumped on his cow and lumbered off into the night. In the ruckus, he lost one of his dirty cowboy boots. Miss Lurleen clasped it in her arms. This is the boot of a real cowboy and the man I want to marry. And I aim to find him. Miss Lurleen moved back inside, and though she asked everybody at the ball, nobody knew who the mysterious cowboy was. Nobody except Dwayne and Milton and their wicked daddy, that is. But they weren't talking. Of course they weren't. The next day, Ms. Lurleen went from ranch to ranch looking for the cowboy who owned the boot. When she came to Dwayne and Milton Ranch, both brothers tried the boot on, but it didn't fit. Miss Lurleen had just climbed on her horse to leave when Bubba rode up. He was dirty and sweaty and smelly from working with the cows, and he was only wearing one boot. Miss Lurleen jumped off her horse and ran over to Bubba. "Try this on," she cried. Bubba took his dirty old boot and pulled it on. "Much obliged, ma'am," he said, blushing. It fit perfectly. "You're my prince and cowboy boot," shouted Miss Lurleen. "I recognize that smell anywhere. Marry me, cowboy, and help me work my ranch." Dwayne and Milton and her wicked daddy threw chicken fits. That had to be a sight. But Bubba just smiled, and he and Miss Lurleen rode off into the sunset. They lived happily ever after, roping and cowpoking and getting the doggies along. And there's the God Cow. I hope y'all enjoyed our campfire tales. Maybe we'll have something else for you coming up real soon.